Hi guys. I made a paid service in Telegram where you will find a great collection of fanfiction audiobooks organized and regularly updated. What you get? An unlimited access to the full audiobook library. New fanfiction audiobooks added regularly. You can play audios directly from Telegram anytime. Joining our service is available through a monthly subscription of $5. You can pay using PayPal or Ko-fi. So what are you waiting for? Send me a message on Telegram or Discord. I will provide the payment details. After the payment is confirmed, you will receive access to the private Telegram channel containing all audiobooks. If you enjoy fanfiction and prefer listening instead of reading, this library is made for you. Message me anytime to join.
129, Water 7 to 15. Time's up. The shrill, piercing shriek of a silver whistle echoed across the ruined, muddy battlefield of the time chamber. Minnie Mary stood atop a pile of pulverized skeleton dust, wearing her bright red tracksuit, aviator sunglasses, and a tiny drill sergeant hat. She had officially, and terrifyingly, appointed herself as Garp's second-in-command for the duration of the training. 5 minutes are over, recruits. Mary shouted through her megaphone. On your feet. If you have time to bleed, you have time to breed. Success. Hydrate, rotate, and get ready for phase 2. Monkey D. Garp swallowed his rice cracker, wiping the crumbs from his chin. He stood up, cracking his neck so loudly it sounded like a snapping shipmast. He looked over the Straw Hat crew, who were groaning and peeling themselves off the floor after their month-long survival simulation against Ben's endless undead army. Thanks to Ben's golden fleece, restoration aura, their muscles were instantly repaired, their stamina refilled, and their broken bones knit back together. But the psychological exhaustion of fighting for a month straight was heavy in their eyes. You survived the warm-up, Garp's voice boomed, completely devoid of his usual grandfatherly warmth. You built a baseline. You found the spark of Haki. But a spark won't keep you alive in the new world. You need a roaring bonfire. For the next 6 months, we are going to forge your spirits in absolute hell. Garp turned to Ben. Magician. I need targets. Something that won't break when these monsters hit it. And make 'em big, Papa. Mary added, pointing her clipboard at Ben. No baby targets. We need maximum durability. Ben adjusted his glasses. He stepped forward. He simply held out his palm. His skin glowed with the golden light. A handful of tiny, 1-inch-tall silver-gray metallic cylinders dropped into his palm, looking like game pieces from a board game. Miniatures. Garp raised an eyebrow. Efficiency, Ben smirked. He tossed the tiny cylinders onto the white tiles, spacing them out perfectly across the vast void. Then, he tapped into the magic of the Spriggan 12. Command T, enlarge. Rumble. Space warped violently. The tiny toy cylinders exploded in size, shooting upwards and outwards. In less than a second, they expanded into 10 massive, cylindrical pillars. Each pillar was 10 feet thick and 50 feet tall. They didn't look like stone or normal steel. They gleamed with a dull, mesmerizing silver-gray sheen that seemed to absorb the ambient light of the room. Vibranium, Ben announced, stepping back. The most resilient metal in my arsenal. It doesn't just deflect impact, it actively absorbs kinetic energy. If you punch this with raw physical strength, the metal will absorb the force and reflect the kinetic shockwave straight back into your own bones. Garp's eyes lit up with a terrifying, sadistic glee. Perfect. He pointed a massive finger at the heavy hitters. Luffy, Ace, Zoro, Sanji, Ben, Dory, Brogy, Oimo, Kashiai. You are the vanguard. Your new daily routine starts now. You will stand in front of these pillars, and you will hit them. Hit them. Ace frowned, igniting his fist. For how long? Until you break them, Garp said flatly. Break them. Zoro walked up to one of the pillars. He drew Wado Ikimonji and swung a casual, yet incredibly powerful slash at the metal. Clang! Zoro's arm vibrated violently. The sword bounced off, leaving absolutely zero marks on the smooth metal. The kinetic feedback traveled up Zoro's arm, forcing him to drop to one knee, gritting his teeth in pain. It's a mirror for physical force, Ben warned, rubbing his own wrist. If you hit it hard, it hits you back just as hard. Exactly. Garp roared. That is why you cannot rely on your muscles. You cannot rely on your devil fruits. The only way to destroy vibranium is to bypass the surface entirely. You must use advanced armament Haki. You must flow your spirit into the pillar and destroy it from the inside out. Emission. Internal destruction. Until you can turn these pillars to dust, you will not sleep. Luffy marched up to his pillar. He didn't complain. He coated his fist in dark black Haki. He pulled his arm back and threw a devastating punch. Thud. Luffy screamed, his rubber arm rippling as the kinetic energy was reflected back into his own shoulder, dislocating it instantly. Ben sighed, raised his wand, and popped Luffy's shoulder back into place with a healing charm. Again, Captain. Garp then turned to the rest of the crew. Nami, Usopp, Chopper, Robin, Vivi, and Karo. Support team. Garp barked. You are the brains, the snipers, the navigators. In a real war, the enemy will always target you first to cripple the vanguard. Your physical strength will never match Kaido or Big Mom. Therefore, your evasion must be absolute. Your observation Haki must reach the peak of precognition. Garp looked at Ben. Magician. Set up the track. Ben nodded. He squatted down and placed his hands on the tiles. Using creation, he fabricated a tiny, intricate diorama of a running track complete with microscopic lava pits, tiny swinging pendulums, and minuscule spikes about the size of a dinner plate. He set it on the floor. Command T, enlarge. VOOM. The diorama expanded exponentially. The flat white void warped and stretched as the massive, circular running track materialized at full scale, stretching for hundreds of miles into the distance. Dragon Tooth Warriors. Rise, Ben chanted, tossing a handful of seeds that he quickly enlarged into fully armed skeletons. From the ground surrounding the track, thousands of skeletal warriors clawed their way to the surface. Ben handed them magical javelins, explosive tags, and heavy boulders. Your task, Garp sneered at the pale-faced support team, is to run. You will run this track continuously. The skeletons will throw everything they have at you. You cannot fight back. You can only dodge. You will run until your legs shatter, and then the magician will heal you, and you will run again. But. Usopp trembled, his knees knocking. There are thousands of them. They have explosives. Then you better not be where the explosives land. Garp yelled. Blindfolds on. Blindfolds. Nami shrieked. We have to run a lava obstacle course while being shot at in the dark. Observation haki is the eye of the mind. Garp roared. If you use your physical eyes, your brain processes the light, sends it to your nerves, and moves your muscles. That is too slow. Feel their intent. Hear the breath of the spears. Move before they even release the weapon. Tweet. Minnie Mary blew her whistle. She jumped onto a small, floating hoverboard Ben had created for her, riding alongside Garp. You heard the Vice Admiral. Mary yelled through her megaphone, flying over the starting line. Move those feet. Let's get this cardio going. Last one around the track owes me 500 berries. Go, go, go. Quack. Kara cried, pulling his goggles down over his eyes as a blindfold and sprinting for his life as a shower of spears rained down behind him. The training was no longer a montage. It was an agonizing, daily reality. For the heavy hitters, the vibranium pillars became their entire world. Every day, for 16 hours a day, the time chamber echoed with the sickening sound of breaking bones and the loud, metallic clang of failed impacts. Sanji's legs were shattered dozens of times. He would ignite his diable jam, coat his leg in haki, and kick the pillar with enough force to level a building. The vibranium would absorb the heat and the impact, and the kinetic rebound would snap his femur. He would collapse, screaming in agony. Ben would cast a healing spell, and Sanji would stand up, light a fresh cigarette with a trembling hand, and kick it again. Zoro fared no better. His hands bled constantly. He realized that simply coating his swords in haki wasn't enough. The vibranium was too dense. He had to learn to let his haki flow out of his body, down the hilt, and form an invisible, sharp extension beyond the physical steel. Every time he failed the flow, the shockwave rattled his organs. Luffy was a madman. His rubber body usually protected him from blunt force, but vibranium was different. The reflected kinetic energy bypassed his elasticity entirely. His arms bruised black and purple. Damn it! Luffy roared, pulling his fist back for the 10,000th time that day. Why won't it break? Because you're hitting the outside. Garp yelled, walking among them. Stop trying to push the metal. You need to push your will into the center of the pillar. Imagine your haki is water flowing through a crack. Fill the inside and burst it. Luffy stared at the pillar, his chest heaving. His stomach let out a massive, echoing rumble. The frustration finally boiled over. If I can't break it. Luffy unhinged his jaw, his eyes turning wild. I'll eat it. Gomu Gomu no. Chomp. Luffy lunged forward and bit down on the solid vibranium with all his might. Clang. Gya-a-a-ah. Luffy bounced off the pillar, clutching his mouth. His rubber teeth were jagged, bent, and comically shattered. Waterfalls of tears sprayed from his eyes. Medic! Chopper screamed from the track, sprinting over blindfolded with his dental tools. Bwahahaha. Garp pointed and laughed uproariously, slapping his knee. You tried to eat the hardest metal. What an absolute idiot. 100 push-ups for stupidity. After Chopper fixed Luffy's mouth, Ben walked over. He saw Luffy staring at the pillar with a blank, frustrated expression. The technical explanation of kinetic flow and molecular bypass that Ben had tried to give earlier had clearly flown 10 miles over Luffy's head. Ben let out a long sigh. No, Luffy. You're still trying to force it. Luffy tilted his head, rubbing his jaw. Then how do I do it? I'm hitting it as hard as I can. Ben rubbed the back of his neck, clearly reconsidering his pedagogical approach. He needed to speak Luffy's language. All right, let me put it in a way you'll understand. The nearby crew leaned in, curious to hear how the resident genius would explain the pinnacle of haki to a boy who thought meat was a personality trait. Ben pointed at Luffy. Imagine you really need to pee. The entire area went silent. A tumbleweed of bone dust rolled past. Luffy, however, nodded with absolute, deadly seriousness. Yeah. If you squeeze too hard, Ben continued calmly, the pee goes everywhere and makes a mess. It's erratic. It lacks power because you're fighting yourself. Sanji and Zoro choked, trying with all their might not to laugh. Garp's cracker stopped halfway to his mouth. But if you relax and let it flow, Ben gestured with his hand in a steady, forward motion, the pee goes straight where you aim it. It has force. It has direction. It has flow. Luffy's eyes widened. A light bulb practically appeared above his head. Oh. Ben tapped Luffy's chest. Haki is the same. Right now you're squeezing too hard and keeping it inside your fist. That's why the metal reflects it. Instead, relax. Let it flow out of your body, through your arm, and guide it toward the target. Don't hit the metal. Aim the stream through it. Luffy looked at his fist. He looked at the pillar. So, don't force it, let it flow, and aim. Ben nodded, satisfied. That's advanced armament. The people nearby exchanged looks of pure, unadulterated bewilderment. Did he really just explain the secret of advanced armament with P? Sanji whispered, horrified. Luffy suddenly grinned, his face lighting up with a dangerous epiphany. I got it. Luffy closed his eyes, concentrating. He took a deep breath. Suddenly, his face went slightly red. He shifted his weight from foot to foot. Wait, Luffy said, his voice strained. I actually have the urge to pee now. Pictured it too well. Everyone sighed in unison, the dramatic tension evaporating instantly. I've got you covered, Captain. Ben snapped his fingers. Using creation, Ben materialized a high-tech, plastic porta-potty right there in the middle of the white void. Luffy scrambled inside, the door slamming shut. 5 minutes later, Luffy emerged. He looked serene, rejuvenated, entirely relaxed. Okay, Luffy said, cracking his neck. Now I'm ready. Luffy stepped in front of the massive vibranium pillar again. He closed his eyes. He didn't tense his muscles. He didn't wind up his punch. He simply relaxed his arm, letting it hang loose. He focused on his haki, not as a shell to harden his skin, but as a liquid stream waiting to be released. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Luffy's fist moved. It wasn't a fast punch. It was a fluid, guided motion. His fist stopped exactly 1 millimeter short of the metal's surface. Boom! A muffled, explosive sound echoed from inside the metal. The vibranium plate caved inward as if struck by a massive, invisible hammer. A crater formed in the center of the pillar, the silver metal warping and cracking from the internal pressure. Luffy's eyes sparked with pure joy. It worked. Ben smirked, crossing his arms. Nature's greatest lesson. I can't believe that actually worked, Nami muttered from the sidelines, her jaw hanging open. I'm not sure whether to laugh or write that down, Usopp added. Garp stood nearby, staring at the dent in the indestructible pillar. He looked at his grandson, who was now bouncing around happily, and then at Ben. The marine hero didn't know whether to praise Luffy's natural fighting genius or fall into a deep pit of despair over how incredibly dumb the catalyst for that genius had been. P. Garp whispered, his spirit visibly trembling. He learned emission, because of P. To survive the sheer physical breakdown of the training, massive calorie intake was paramount. And Sanji was delivering a masterclass in extreme endurance cooking. 4 times a day, the time chamber echoed with the ringing of a massive dinner bell. Sanji stood behind his conjured kitchen, cooking with his feet while actively fighting off stray dragon-tooth warriors just to keep his reflexes sharp. Ben, I need 50 pounds of rice, 2 crates of sky cabbage, and the fattest sea king you've got in that pouch. Sanji roared, flipping an entire roasted boar in the air with a single kick. Coming right up, Ben, hovering nearby on a magical disc, reached into his stasis-enchanted spatial pouch. He pulled out a massive, frozen chunk of premium sea king meat and tossed it perfectly onto Sanji's cutting board, followed by sacks of fresh produce. Because of Ben's inventory and creation magic, they were never short on 5-star ingredients. The crew would sprint to the tables, inhale the nutrient-dense, perfectly spiced meals, and immediately sprint back to the pillars or the track under the terrifying whistle-blows of their tiny second-in-command. Meanwhile, on the endless track, the support team was experiencing their own unique hell. Left, duck, roll, jump. Robin's voice was the only thing keeping them alive. With her devil fruit, she sprouted ears and eyes, under her blindfold, along the track, acting as a radar for the others. Explosives at 3 o'clock. Robin called out calmly, flipping backward as a magically enhanced boulder smashed into the ground where she had just been. Usopp, gasping for breath, felt his lungs burning. He couldn't see, and the constant barrage was exhausting his newly awakened haki. Desperate, he ducked behind a large, conjured rock to take a quick, 5-second breather while the skeletons passed. Hovering above them on her hoverboard, Mary's head snapped toward him like a hawk locking onto prey. Acting as Garp's official enforcer, she was absolutely ruthless. Uncle Usopp. Mary's voice boomed through her megaphone. I see you camping. No AFK in the survival zone. That's a 10-berry deduction from your weekly allowance. And I'm adding a spicy modifier for loitering. My allowance. Usopp gasped, peeking out from behind the rock. Ben, standing safely on a pillar, snapped his fingers lazily. Instantly, the rusted swords of the skeletal warriors chasing Usopp burst into magical, roaring flames. You can't deduct my allowance, I'm the second in command. Usopp screamed, sprinting out from behind the rock with his pants slightly singed, running faster than he ever had before. They're getting too comfortable, Garp noted in month 4. Ben used a combination of magic, creation and command T to create a Iceland and a volcano. Suddenly, the void shifted. Half the room became a negative 50-degree blizzard, the other half, a volcanic wasteland. Focus. Garp's voice cut through the howling wind. If your haki wavers, you freeze. Chopper, covered in thick fur, was practically dying of heatstroke on the track, but he forced his observation haki to its absolute limit to predict lava geysers. Ben then introduced 20 times normal gravity. Luffy was driven to his knees, his punches feeling like they were moving through lead. Month 5, the Rally of the Flag. By the 5th month, the physical toll was completely negated by Ben's healing, but the psychological toll was reaching critical mass. They were trapped in an endless cycle of agonizing pain, extreme weather, and impossible tasks. They had forgotten what the sun looked like. The silence of the void, broken only by the sound of impacts and explosions, was deafening. In the support team's sector, Usopp finally collapsed. His knees hit the dirt track. His blindfold was soaked in sweat. He was gasping for air, his lungs refusing to expand. Around him, the skeletal army closed in, raising their fiery spears. Usopp! Nami cried out, stopping her run to turn back for him. Leave me, Usopp wheezed, his spirit finally cracking. I can't do another lap. My brain is fried. I can't sense them anymore. Vivi and Robin stopped beside him, deflecting the incoming spears, but they too were swaying on their feet. Chopper lay on his back, his hooves twitching. In the heavy hitters sector, Luffy was resting his forehead against the cold vibranium pillar. His arms hung limply at his sides. He had hit the pillar a million times. It was fractured, but it wouldn't break. It's too hard, Luffy whispered, a rare moment of doubt clouding his mind. I'm not strong enough. Zoro dropped his swords, falling to his knees. Sanji leaned against his pillar, his eyes closed, the fire in his leg extinguished. Garp watched them. He didn't yell. He knew this moment was coming. The wall of despair. This was the moment that separated the strong from the legends. If they couldn't push past this, they would die in the new world. Ben stood nearby, his wand lowered. He looked at the exhausted crew. He looked at Mary. Mary understood. The drill sergeant routine wasn't going to work anymore. They didn't need a commander right now. They needed a reminder of why they were doing this. Mary deactivated her hoverboard. She landed softly on the ground. She took off her drill sergeant hat and her sunglasses, revealing her big, expressive eyes. She walked over to the largest, tallest vibranium pillar in the center of the room. She stood on the summit, looking down at her broken, exhausted family. Mary reached into her spatial pocket. She pulled out a massive, folded piece of black cloth attached to a long wooden pole. With a fierce, determined yell, Mary swung the pole outward. The cloth unfurled, catching the artificial wind of the time chamber. It was massive, 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. It was the Jolly Roger. The Straw Hat skull and crossbones. Mary planted the base of the pole on the top of the pillar. She gripped it with both hands and began to wave the colossal flag back and forth. The heavy snap-snap of the thick canvas echoed through the silent void. Look up. Mary's voice rang out, not through a megaphone, but with her own, desperate, emotional voice. Look up at the flag. Luffy slowly raised his head. Usopp peeled his blindfold off. Zoro opened his eye. They saw the small girl standing at the summit of their nightmare, waving the symbol of their freedom, her face streaked with tears of empathy. You are the Straw Hat Pirates. Mary screamed, her voice cracking with emotion. You are the ones who saved the East Blue from our Long Pirates. You are the ones who conquered the desert and rang the golden bell in the sky. You burned down the world government's front door to save Auntie Robin. Robin gasped, covering her mouth as she looked up at the flag. You didn't come this far to be beaten by a piece of metal. Mary cried, waving the flag harder, her small arms trembling under the weight. You didn't come this far to give up on a running track. You promised to take me to the end of the sea. Mary took a deep breath, her digital heart thumping wildly in her chest. She began to sing. It wasn't a perfect, polished rendition. It was raw, breathless, and filled with tears, but it was the song that connected every pirate on the sea. Yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho. Yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho. The haunting, beautiful melody of Binks' sake drifted down from the pillar. Gather up all of the crew, it's time to ship out Binks' brew. Sea wind blows, to where, who knows? The waves will be our guide. Usopp stared at the flag. He remembered Syrup Village. He remembered his dream to be a brave warrior. He gritted his teeth, his hands digging into the dirt. Tie up fears and hardships too, we'll sail the sea to somewhere new. Sanji opened his eyes. He remembered the all blue. He pushed himself off the pillar, his leg slowly reigniting with a pure, white-hot flame. Zoro picked up his swords. He remembered Kuina. He remembered his promise to Mihawk. His aura flared, turning the air around him a dark, demonic purple. Luffy stared at the skull wearing the straw hat, the hat that Shanks had given him, the promise to become the king. Let's all sing out, a pirate song, a song of the sea. Luffy slowly stood up. The crushing gravity didn't matter. The pain didn't matter. He clenched his fists. He didn't look at the pillar. He looked through it. She's right, Luffy whispered, a terrifying grin spreading across his face. We have to go to the end of the sea. Yeah. Usopp screamed, forcing himself to his feet. He pulled his blindfold back down over his eyes. I am God, Usopp. A few skeletons won't kill me. Let's go, support team. Nami yelled, sparking her Climattact. Full speed. The energy in the time chamber shifted entirely. The despair evaporated, burned away by the sheer, unadulterated will of the Straw Hat crew. Gabababa. Dory and Brogy roared, raising their weapons, tears in their eyes from the song. For the little one. Month 6, the awakening. The final month of this phase was a crescendo of small breakthroughs. They had broken past their mental walls, but the vibranium was still winning the physical war. On the track, the support team was flowing. Usopp, fully blindfolded, sidestepped spears with a grace he didn't know he possessed. Nami moved like a leaf on the wind. They're starting to glimpse the immediate future, Ben noted. It's flickering, but it's there. In the heavy sector, Luffy stood before his pillar. It was covered in dents and hairline cracks, but it still stood tall. He took a deep breath, coating his arm in armament haki. He relaxed. He let the stream flow. Luffy threw a punch. It stopped short. Thwump. A massive, spider webbing crack raced up the entire 50-foot pillar. Chunks of vibranium flaked off, but the core held firm. Shing! Zoro unleashed an Iato draw. The haki extended from his blade, carving a 3-foot-deep gash into the indestructible metal, but he didn't cut through. Whoosh! Sanji's white-hot kick melted a crater into his pillar, but the structure remained standing. Garp surveyed the damage. He looked at the panting, scarred pirates. They hadn't shattered the pillars yet. They hadn't mastered the internal destruction, but the seed of advanced hacking had finally taken root. Garp slowly raised a hand to his dog mask, a wide, proud grin splitting his face. Magician, Garp rumbled. Yes, Vice Admiral. Ben asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Garp, his voice full of a new, terrifying intensity. They've finally learned to crawl, but the new world will eat them if they can't run. Garp cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing like cannon fire. Open the crates, Magician. We still have 8 months left in this room, Garp announced, his eyes glowing with a predatory light. The warm-up is officially over. Now, the real training begins. Ben smiled, raising his wand. I was hoping you'd say that. The door to the time chamber remained sealed as the crew turned back to their pillars, the sound of the next 8 months of struggle already beginning to ring out in the white void. 130, Water 7 to 16. The time chamber, month 7, the deepening abyss. The spark that had been achieved at the 6-month mark was not the end. To Garp, it was barely the entrance fee to the real arena of the new world. You've learned to see the door, Garp roared, standing atop a mountain of shattered vibranium fragments that Luffy had finally managed to pulverize. Now, I'm going to make you walk through it and live in the dark. The next 6 months were a blur of coordinated suffering. By month 8, the most surprising development wasn't the strength of the monsters, but the sheer pettiness of the sniper. Usopp, fueled by the Falcon Serum and Garp's relentless rock-throwing drills, had achieved something even Zoro and Sanji were still struggling to stabilize: consistent advanced observation haki, future sight. During a lunch break, Sanji had prepared a single, perfectly marbled Sea King steak as a reward for the most improved trainee. He set it on a plate in the center of the table. Luffy's hand moved before the plate even touched the wood. Gomu Gomu no. Snatch. His arm blurred, stretching toward the meat. Usopp, sitting 3 chairs away, didn't even look up from his juice. His eyes flashed a dull red for a microsecond. He casually slid his own empty plate 2 inches to the left. Luffy's hand slammed into the wood where the meat had been a fraction of a second prior. Luffy blinked, his hand retracting. I missed. Luffy tried again. A high-speed gatling of grabs. Usopp, looking bored, tilted his head, moved his fork, and shifted his chair. Every single one of Luffy's lightning-fast attempts hit empty air or the table. How are you doing that? Luffy screamed, his eyes popping out. Are you a ghost? I saw you fail that grab 2 seconds ago, Captain, Usopp said, finally looking up with a smug, godlike grin. He stabbed the steak with his fork and took a triumphant bite. My meat. My rules. Go eat a rice cracker. Garp, watching from the side, threw his head back and laughed until he choked. Wahahaha. The long nose is using the ultimate perception of the sea to protect his lunch. That's the most pathetic and brilliant thing I've ever seen. Your haki is like a wall, Ben, Zoro grunted, his 3 blades coated in purple haki as he clashed against Ben's forearm. But it's static. You're using it like a shield, not a weapon. I'm used to magic doing the work for me, Ben admitted, his eyes glowing gold. Ben began practicing a new technique, weaving his haki into his ruler's authority. He learned to project his willpower through his telekinetic grip. Instead of just pulling objects, he was now crushing the very space around them with armament-reinforced intent. By month 10, Ben could coat his entire golden armor in a secondary layer of pitch-black armament haki, making him a literal tank that even Dory and Brogy struggled to dent. Around month 9, a new phenomenon occurred. Zoro and Sanji were engaged in their daily deathmatch in a corner of the void. They were fully healed every night, so they fought with homicidal intent. Diable Jam, Hell's Kitchen. Sanji roared, his leg turning a blinding, radioactive white. Santoryu, Dragon Damnation. Zoro countered, his swords humming with a dark, demonic purple. As their attacks collided, a shockwave of such immense, soul-crushing pressure erupted. Black and red lightning crackled between the cook and the swordsman. They awakened it, Ben noted, shielding his eyes. The color of the Supreme King. Garp grinned from his lawn chair. But they're wild. No control. They're like toddlers with loaded cannons. While the monsters brawled, the support team, Nami, Chopper, Robin, Ariel/Vivi, and Karo, were undergoing a different kind of evolution. Garp forced them to live in total darkness for 3 months straight. Ben summoned thousands of dragon-tooth warriors that were enchanted with disillusionment charms, making them both invisible and silent. Nami learned to sense the minute shifts in air temperature and humidity to predict where a skeleton was breathing, allowing her to strike with lightning-fast precision. Chopper refined his monster point, able to maintain it for a long time. Vivi, Ariel, had her own breakthrough. Driven by the memory of her kingdom's suffering, she awakened Conqueror's haki during a drill where Garp cornered her, though her control remained erratic. By the end of month 12, the growth was staggering. Luffy, Ace, and Ben, masters of advanced armament, internal destruction, and advanced observation, future sight, controlled Conqueror's haki. Sanji and Zoro, masters of advanced armament and observation, awakened Conquerors, volatile. The giants, Dory, Brogy, Oimo, Kashii massive haki reserves, capable of shrouding their entire forms in obsidian-dense armor. Nami, Chopper, Robin, Karo, perfection of basic haki. Usopp, future sight achieved. Perfection of armament haki. Vivi, Conquerors awakened. Perfection of basic haki. Month 13, the final lesson. As the 13th month began, Ben removed all the equipment. Garp stood in the center of the white void. He reached up and slowly unbuttoned his Marine Vice Admiral's coat, letting the white fabric fall to the floor. For the final month, there is only one exercise, Garp announced. The 12 of you, against me, all at once. No breaks. Garp took a deep breath. Through he released his Conqueror's haki. The white void turned dark red. The air screamed. A year ago, this would have made the crew faint. Now, they all stood firm. Their feet were planted. Their eyes were wide open. They didn't flinch. The final month was not just a fight, it was a televised event for the rest of the ship's systems. Minnie Mary sat on a high, floating platform Ben had created, wearing a professional headset with a boom mic and a blazer over her dress. She had a holographic live chat and scoreboard floating next to her. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are live." Mary's voice boomed over the speakers, utilizing a high-energy professional sports commentator's voice. "Welcome to the final round of the Punch the Grandpa Invitational. I'm your host, Minnie Mary, and we are witnessing absolute history here today. This isn't just a fight, it's a 12-man raid on a final boss who clearly has hacks enabled." Below her, the 12 versus 1 brawl was catastrophic. "And look at that opening," Mary screamed into the mic. "Luffy goes for the head, but Garp ducks with zero effort. Absolute skill issue, ratioed by a senior citizen. The captain is melding, folks. Zoro and Sanji are trying a pincer maneuver. The Mossman is swinging the 3000 worlds while the Lovecook is going for the L memories. And oh, Garp just caught Zoro's blade with his teeth and kicked Sanji into next Tuesday. Talk about a tank diff. That's a major L for the wings of the future Pirate King. Someone tell them to touch grass." Nami and Usopp are trying to kite him from the backline. Aimbot enabled on God Usopp. He's firing laser arrows like he's playing a first-person shooter. But Garp is he's just swatting them away while eating a rice cracker with his left hand. The disrespect. He's literally AFK farming my crew. This is the most mid performance I've ever seen from the Vanguard. The battle raged for weeks. Day 15. The fatigue is setting in, but the content is fire. Mary shouted, her headset flashing with emoji alerts. Ben is trying to use ruler's authority to pin the Vice Admiral. He's pulling out the national level hunter energy. But look at GARP. The old man just flexed his hacky and broke the telekinetic grip. Magician. More like Tragic Ian. Ben is currently 0 and 500 in 1v1s. Someone get this man a tutorial. Ariel is entering the fray. She is diving with the vibranium spear. She releases a sonic screech. Garp just shouted shut up so loud it neutralized the sound waves. Counter-spelled. Imagine getting silenced by a shout. She is currently crying in bird noises. Big mood. And look at the giants. The Elbaf squad is going for the Warrior Nation combo. A double shockwave. This is the ultimate AoE attack. But wait, Garp just punched the air and created a vacuum that sucked the shockwave into a black hole of kinetic feedback. He just deleted their ultimate. Garp is definitely using a smurf account. This isn't fair play. On day 29, the entire crew launched their final, desperate combo. Here it comes. The ultimate team finisher. Mary yelled, standing up on her platform, her glasses glowing. The monster quintet. Ace, Luffy, Ben, Zoro, Sanji. Unleash everything. If they fail this, they are officially washed. Boom. The collision of haki and magic was so intense it actually caused a temporary tear in the fabric of the time chamber dimension. The aftermath, day 30, month 14. The silence that followed was heavy. The white void was returning to its sterile state. The entire Straw Hat crew was lying on the ground. They were battered, their suits in tatters, their skin covered in soot. Luffy was snoring. Sanji was looking for a cigarette. In the center of the crater stood Monkey D. Garp. He was panting lightly. He was covered in scratches. A small trickle of blood ran down his temple. Garp began to chuckle. The chuckle grew into a booming laugh. BWA. Wahahaha. You brats, you actually did it. You made me bleed. Not bad for 1 year training. Ben, lying on his back, slowly raised his hand. Golden Fleece, final restoration. A massive, warm tidal wave of golden light washed over the group. Stamina refilled. Wounds knit. Ben stood up, adjusting his cracked glasses. He walked over to Garp. You're in your prime, Garp-san, Ben said. But the world outside needs the legend they recognize. If you walk back to your ship looking 30 years younger, Sengoku will have more than just a headache. He'll have a heart attack. Ben reached into his spatial pouch and pulled out a dark, swirling gray potion. This is the reversion catalyst, Ben explained. It will undo the de-aging effect of the first elixir. Drink it. Garp took the vial, looked at his massive, youthful hands one last time, and shrugged. He downed it in one gulp. The transformation was rapid. His black hair turned back to stark white. His muscles, while still huge, regained their slightly leaner, aged density. The wrinkles returned to his face. The prime hero vanished, replaced once again by the old vice admiral. Gah, Garp groaned, rubbing his knees. I missed the back pain. It keeps me grounded. Ben then pulled out 2 sets of leather-wrapped cases. 2 sets, Ben said, handing them to Garp. The golden potions will bring you back to your prime. The gray ones will return you to your current age. Use them only when the world truly needs the hero of God Valley again. Garp stared at the potions. This was a gift of unimaginable value, the power to reclaim one's peak. You're a generous pirate, magician. I'm a pirate who values allies, Ben replied. Finally, Ben handed Garp a sleek, black Komoyo bead bracelet. This is linked to our private frequency. If the world government tries something, or if you just want to talk to your grandsons without Sengoku listening, just tap the center bead. Garp snapped the bracelet onto his wrist, hiding it under his sleeve. Alright, Garp rumbled, looking toward the heavy golden door. Open it up. The door swung open, revealing the warm interior of the Going Merry. Luffy was the first out, shielding his eyes. Freedom. The rest of the crew tumbled out behind him. The moment they hit the deck of the ship and smelled the salty air of Water 7, every single Straw Hat, including Zoro and Sanji, instantly flopped onto the wooden floor. Thud, 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 Finally. Usopp wheezed, kissing the wood. The demon instructor is leaving. No more rocks. No more future sight snack wars. I'm going to sleep for a month, Nami muttered into the deck. Garp stood at the railing, looking down at his exhausted grandsons. He looked at Luffy and Ace, who were both looking up at him with tired but incredibly bright eyes. Listen up, you brats. Garp barked. The crew flinched, even while lying down. Garp pointed a massive, calloused finger at Luffy and Ace. You too. You've gotten stronger, but you're still reckless idiots. Don't you dare go dying on me. Make sure you eat your meat, brush your teeth, and don't let the world chew you up. If you get killed before I see you again, I'll chase you down to the afterlife and beat you both black and blue all over again. You hear me? Luffy grinned. Shishishi. We won't die, Grandpa. I'm gonna be the Pirate King. And I'm gonna catch the traitor, Ace added, sitting up. Garp grunted, his gaze shifting to Zoro, Sanji, and the rest of the exhausted crew. As for the rest of you, don't slack off. That training was just the beginning. Keep pushing your limits, or the sea will swallow you whole. Finally, Garp looked at Ben. His expression hardened into a look of quiet respect. Magician, watch over these fools. Keep them out of unnecessary trouble if you can. I'll do my best, Vice Admiral, Ben nodded. But you know how they are. Bwahahaha, that I do. Garp laughed, hopping over the railing and landing on the dock with a heavy thud. He adjusted his dog mask, grabbed a cracker from his infinite pouch, and began walking toward his battleship without looking back. Goodbye then, you idiots. Garp shouted over his shoulder, his massive hand waving dismissively. Don't let the Marines catch you. I'm not coming to save you next time. The Straw Hats watched as the legendary marine hero disappeared into the evening fog of Water 7. The silence on the deck lasted for exactly 3 seconds. He's gone. Luffy screamed, jumping up. Get off the floor, you lazy Marimo. Sanji yelled, kicking Zoro who was already sleeping. Free Duung. Chopper and Usopp danced in circles. Once the initial chaos settled, Luffy's stomach let out a thunderous rumble that shook the deck. He looked over at Ben. Hey Ben, since we're done training, how much time before our new ship is ready? I want to see the big meat locker. It will take a few more days, Ben replied, adjusting his glasses. We have already finished finalizing the blueprints of the ship, and the shipwrights were working on the core structure before we entered the time chamber. Since time flows differently in there, I don't know how much progress they have made in the real world. I should go and check with Frankie and Iceberg. While you do that, Sanji said, tying an apron over his ruined suit, his eyes burning with culinary passion. I am going to prepare the ultimate victory dinner. A feast to celebrate surviving 14 months of hell. Meat. Luffy and Ace roared in unison. Yeah, plenty of meat, Sanji smirked. Let's get cooking. Ben stood at the helm, watching the chaos with a smile. The year of the monster was over. The era of the Straw Hat Syndicate was just beginning. Mary, Ben said. Yes, Papa. Set coordinates for the next island. And, good job on the commentary. You're a natural. GG, Papa. GG. 131, Water 7 to 17. The sun over Water 7 was warm, but the breeze carried the cool, salty mist of the Fountain City's many canals. To the citizens of the city, it had only been 3 days since the legendary Battle of Enice Lobby and the subsequent disappearance of the Straw Hat Pirates into their mysterious training retreat. But for the pirates themselves, a lifetime of struggle, growth, and sweat had passed within the white void of the time chamber. They had entered that room as promising rookies. They had emerged as absolute monsters. For the first few days back in the real world, the crew did something they hadn't done in 14 long, agonizing months. They rested. In the private, walled garden of Iceberg's headquarters, the atmosphere was a chaotic but heartwarming picture of domestic bliss. The crew were wearing comfortable, breezy clothes. The sunlit garden looked exactly like a typical, albeit incredibly loud, pirate hangout. Nami, Vivi, still operating under her disguise as Ariel, and Robin sat around a white wrought iron table beneath a sprawling willow tree, enjoying the peaceful morning. Nami was methodically counting stacks of bills from a silver briefcase, Vivi was gently feeding Kara some premium skyseed, and Robin was deeply engrossed in a heavy leather-bound book. It's strange, Vivi whispered, her eagle-sharp eyes tracking the erratic flight path of a butterfly across the garden. In the time chamber, I felt like every second was a battle. My muscles were always tense. Now, even drinking this tea feels suspiciously quiet. That's the sign of a veteran, Ariel, Robin replied, her voice smooth and maternal. She took a delicate sip of her coffee, enjoying the real, rich aroma that Ben's nutrient paste had severely lacked. We've traded the storm for the harbor. Enjoy it while it lasts. We are currently the most wanted pirate crew in the first half of the Grand Line, Nami muttered, adjusting her casual sun hat. She snapped the briefcase shut with a sharp click. Our combined bounties are over 2 billion berries. The world is probably terrified of us. And yet... Nami pointed a perfectly manicured finger across the lawn. Our captain is currently trying to eat a playing card. Nearby, the card game on the grass was anything but peaceful. Luffy, Ace, Chopper, and Usopp were engaged in a high-stakes, incredibly intense game of Pirate's Bluff. Because of their newly mastered haki, a simple game of cards had escalated into a psychological nightmare. Dory and Brogy loomed over the circle like massive, muscular older brothers, their shadows covering the table as they placed bets using gold coins the size of dinner plates. I fold. Chopper squeaked, his casual orange tank top ruffling as he threw his cards down in frustration. Luffy is using future sight. I am not. Luffy protested, a giant, dripping piece of water meat hanging from his mouth. He was sweating profusely, his eyes darting around. I'm just predicting that you're gonna lose. Because I'm the captain. That's literally the exact definition of future sight, you rubber idiot. Usopp yelled, clutching his cards tightly to his chest. He adjusted his goggles, his own eyes glowing faintly red behind the lenses. But it won't work on me. I'm using my observation haki to read the sweat on your brow, Luffy. Your heart rate just spiked. You're bluffing. You have a pair of twos. Luffy blinked, looking down at his cards in shock. How'd you know? Because I can literally hear your heartbeat tattletalling on you. Usopp roared triumphantly. Ace, sitting across from them in an open vest, casually sparked a small white flame on his index finger and quietly burned his terrible hand to ash under the table. Dealer misdeal, Ace stated smoothly. Hand me new cards, Usopp. Hey, no devil fruits at the poker table. Under the shade of a massive oak tree on the far side of the garden, the grass was completely undisturbed because Zoro was, as usual, missing. BZZT. Click. Uncle Zoro, Minnie Mary's voice crackled efficiently from the Kamoyo bead strapped to Zoro's wrist. You are currently standing in the middle of a retirement home's high-stakes bingo night. Please turn around. Shut up, kid. Zoro's gruff voice growled back through the comms. The North Pole shifted. I was following the moss on the trees like a real survivalist. There are no trees in a bingo hall, uncle. You are looking at a potted plastic fern. Turn 180 degrees and walk toward the smell of salt. Salt is everywhere. This is a water city. Everything smells like salt. In the center of the garden, offering a stark contrast to the bickering, Minnie Mary sat on a small, elevated wooden stage. She wore a bright, cheerful yellow sundress, though she kept a simple pair of round sunglasses pushed up on her hair. She held an enchanted, beautifully crafted acoustic guitar that Ben had built for her. The crew naturally began to quiet down. The intense bickering over cards faded to a low murmur. The giants leaned back against the garden wall, crossing their massive arms respectfully. Sanji stepped out onto the porch from the kitchen, carrying a massive silver tray stacked high with gourmet sandwiches, but he paused, the cigarette in his mouth unlit. Mary's voice, undeniably warm, melodic, and beautifully human, began to drift through the crisp afternoon air. If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, Mary sang, her fingers plucking the strings with gentle expertise, her eyes drifting toward the crew. I'll sail the world to find you. As the lyrics hung in the air, Robin's mind flashed back to the bridge of hesitation. She saw the Going Merry hovering in the dark, rain-swept sky, the blue thrusters glowing like stars against the abyss. She remembered the sheer impossibility of the ship defying the entire world government, crossing a bottomless waterfall just to catch her when she fell. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Nami closed her eyes, the memory of a bloodstained map room in Arlong Park rushing back. She saw herself confined in the room drawing maps, trapped in a nightmare. Beside her, Vivi's breath hitched. The princess remembered infiltration Baroque works as Crocodile's towering shadow loomed over her dying kingdom. They remembered the absolute, suffocating darkness they were trapped in and the exact moment Luffy and the crew shattered their cages and brought the dawn. Find out what we're made of, when we are called to help our friends in need. A flash of the time chamber's white void filled Luffy, Ace, and Ben's minds. They saw themselves standing back to back, covered in soot and blood, their bones aching. They were facing the unstoppable, terrifying force of Prime Garp. But instead of fear, the three of them looked at each other, shared a bloodied, reckless grin, and charged back into hell together, forging an unbreakable vanguard. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. The image of them all standing at Enice lobby landing on the bridge of hesitation flashed through everyone's minds. The synchronized impact, the black suits they had worn that day, the absolute, unwavering certainty that no matter how many thousands of Marines or assassins stood in their way, they would be there. And I know when I need it I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. The support team saw themselves, Usopp's Wakandan shield dome blocking cannon fire, Chopper's monster point swatting away Kumadori, Vivi's sonic spear piercing Fukura's defenses. They were the backbone, the ones who ensured the vanguard never had to look behind them. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh 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 ooh, ooh ooh, yeah, yeah. Sanji wiped a stray tear from his visible eye. Onion residue, just onion residue, he muttered to himself, despite not having chopped any onions for over an hour. If you're tossin' in your tunin and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. Ace looked at Luffy. He remembered the nights in the time chamber when the sheer physical exhaustion was so great they couldn't even close their eyes without screaming. They had sat back to back in the cold white void, Ace's fire providing a small, warm hearth to keep the chill away while Luffy babbled about meat to keep them sane. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you, oh. The giants, Dory and Brogy, looked at Oimo and Kashiai. They remembered the moment the 50-year lie was broken at the gates of justice. The 5 decades of separation, slavery, and manipulation vanished in a single, earth-shattering gabababa. Find out what we're made of, when we are called to help our friends in need. Frankie, who had been lingering near the garden gates holding a wrench, adjusted his sunglasses as he listened. He thought of Tom, of Iceberg, and of his chaotic, loyal family in the scrapyard. He wiped a metallic hand across his face, deeply moved by the realization that even an outcast, Speedo-wearing cyborg had people who would show up when he needed them most. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh 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 ooh, ooh ooh ooh, yeah, yeah. Under the oak tree, Zoro who knows when he came was still fast asleep, but his rhythmic, chainsaw-like snoring miraculously managed to harmonize with Mary's gentle acoustic. You'll always have my shoulder when you cry. I'll never let go, never say goodbye. You know. Chopper's mind drifted to the laboratory on the ship. He saw Minnie Mary's first real tear sliding down her cheek. He felt the rapid thump-thump of her new heartbeat under his stethoscope. "You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh 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 ooh, ooh 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 ooh. You can count on me 'cause I can count on you." The song finished with a gentle, lingering flourish of the guitar strings. For a long moment, there was silence in the garden, a heavy, comfortable warmth blanketing the crew. Then, Luffy let out a wide, toothy grin. "Good song, Mary." "GG, Captain," Mary smiled brightly, stowing her guitar into her subspace pocket. "But Uncle Zoro has just tried to cut his way through a locked bank vault because he thought it was a shortcut to the kitchen. Sending the Yagara Bull police to retrieve him now." While the crew rested and recovered, Dock 1 of the Galley Law Company was a whirlwind of relentless, focused activity. Ben was working alongside Iceberg, Frankie, and the two human-sized giants, Oimo and Kashi. The two giants were surprisingly skilled at heavy labor. Kashi was utilizing a specialized, high-heat arc welder Ben had fabricated from arc reactor components, while Oimo was holding massive, unyielding atom wood beams in place with just one hand. "Steady, Oimo," Ben directed. "I've got it, magician." Oimo grunted. Ben spent the next few days in a trance of pure engineering and magic. He didn't want to just build a ship, he wanted to build an indestructible masterpiece. He used Brandish's Command T to shrink massive, dense components into place before enlarging them right inside the joints, ensuring a fit so precise and tightly bound that it defied the laws of traditional shipbuilding. Iceberg and Frankie stood nearby, watching Ben seamlessly fuse a massive steel keel plate into the atom wood hull using alchemy. "It's terrifying," Iceberg muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. He's bypassing weeks of manual labor with a flick of his wrist. The structural integrity is flawless. Not even a microscopic gap for water to seep through. "Suyu upper terrifying." Frankie agreed, his eyes shining with tears of engineering joy. "But look at those lines. Look at that arc reactor, its power and its integration. It's a work of art." Ben also spent hours inside the hull, teaching the ship's new secondary AI. A week later, the entire city seemed to gather at Dock 1. Iceberg, Polly, Kokoro, and the loud, boisterous Frankie family stood at the front of the massive crowd. In the center of the dry dock, a colossal structure loomed, covered entirely in a massive, vibrant red cloth that rippled heavily in the sea breeze. Luffy was vibrating on his heels. "Ben, more, how much time for the reveal?" Luffy complained loudly, pulling at his hair. "Let everyone come, Luffy." "Wait for the reveal," Ben laughed, standing at the forefront of his crew. The Straw Hat Pirates and Ace stood in a line before the draped ship, dressed in fresh, vibrant new outfits Ben had designed for their upcoming journey, looking every bit the legendary crew they had become. Ben stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. He looked out at the massive crowd of shipwrights and citizens. "Thank you all for coming," Ben's voice was clear, carrying across the docks effortlessly. "A ship is more than just wood and nails. It is a home. It is a promise. To the master shipwrights of Galley Law and the relentless workers of the Frankie family, thank you. You provided the foundation. You built the heart of this beast alongside me." Ben looked over at Minnie Mary, who was sitting on a small chair to the side. In front of her was a full set of orchestral drums he had conjured. "Mary," Ben said, a small, proud smirk playing on his lips. "Drum roll, please." Mary's eyes lit up. She grabbed her sticks and became a blur. DRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR Ben raised his right hand. He looked up at the massive red cloth. Today, Ben announced, his voice ringing out, we sail toward the future. Ben snapped his fingers. Snap. The red cloth vanished, shrunk into nothingness in a fraction of a second by Command T. The crowd gasped. There it stood. The ship was magnificent, the size of the legendary Oro Jackson, built of polished, indestructible atomwood, with the iconic sun lion figurehead gleaming brilliantly in the evening light. It was a battleship designed for the king of the seas. Ben stepped back, a proud smile on his face as he looked at the awestruck, completely speechless faces of his crew. Everyone, Ben announced, his voice carrying the promise of 1,000 new adventures. I present to you our new home. The Thousand Sunny. 132 Water 7 to 18. The collective gasp from the crowd at Dock 1 was enough to suck the air out of the harbor. The Thousand Sunny stood before them, a towering marvel of engineering and magic that completely redefined the concept of a pirate ship. It was vast, carrying the sheer, intimidating presence of the legendary Oro Jackson, yet it possessed a vibrant, inviting warmth that perfectly encapsulated the spirit of the Straw Hat Syndicate. Well, Ben said, adjusting his glasses and looking at his dumbstruck crew, don't just stand there on the dock. Let's take the tour. Luffy didn't need to be told twice. With a joyous, ear-shattering whoop, he stretched his rubber arms, grabbed the railing of the main deck, and slingshot himself aboard, his vibrant new red jacket fluttering in the wind. Ace laughed, bursting into flames and rocketing up after his younger brother. The rest of the crew hurried up the gangplank, their eyes wide with unrestrained awe. Iceberg, Kokoro, and Polly stood at the base of the ship, shaking their heads in sheer disbelief at the architectural impossibility resting in their dry dock. As soon as Ben stepped onto the deck, he clapped his hands together. All right, everyone, gather around, Ben called out, his voice easily carrying over the excited chatter of the crew. What you see before you is the culmination of Galilaw's master craftsmanship, the Frankie family's raw materials, and my unique additions. Let me walk you through our new home. Ben walked over to the ship's railing. He patted the thick, polished golden brown wood. The entire skeletal structure and hull of this ship are carved from the treasure tree atom, Ben explained. It is the strongest, most resilient wood in the world. However, recognizing the threats we will face in the new world, I decided to reinforce it. Ben tapped his finger against the wood, sending a tiny pulse of mana into it. Suddenly, microscopic, intricate threads woven seamlessly into the grain of the wood began to glow with a faint, mesmerizing violet light. I used alchemy to weave pure vibranium threads at a molecular level throughout the entire hull, Ben continued, watching the crew's jaws drop. Coupled with shock-absorbing enchantments and kinetic reflection runes, the hull of the Thousand Sunny is virtually indestructible. Cannonballs will bounce off. Sea kings will break their teeth. Even a direct hit from an admiral's barrage will have its kinetic energy absorbed and dispersed harmlessly across the vibranium web. So, it's a tank? Usopp asked, his eyes practically turning into stars. A giant, floating, indestructible tank. It is a fortress, Ben corrected with a smirk. Follow me below deck. Ben led the crew down a wide, elegantly carved staircase. Unlike the cramped, narrow halls of a standard pirate galleon, the interior corridors of the Sunny were astonishingly wide and heavily vaulted, owing to the spatial expansion runes Ben had meticulously carved into the doorframes. They arrived at the lowest level of the ship, a room sealed by a massive, blast-proof tungsten door. Ben placed his hand on a biometric scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a room bathed in a cool, pulsing blue light. In the center of the room, encased in reinforced, transparent aluminum, was a massive, glowing arc reactor. It thrummed with a quiet, infinite power, spinning rapidly and casting a brilliant azure glow over their faces. The heart of the ship, Ben announced. A localized, self-sustaining arc reactor. It runs on clean, infinite energy. It powers the ship's internal lighting, the climate control, the automated defense turrets, the kitchen appliances, and, most importantly, the Jaeon cannon in the figurehead. We will never need wind if we don't want it. The paddle wheels and thrusters can run indefinitely on this core. It's beautiful. Chopper whispered, mesmerized by the glowing blue ring. And that's just the basement, Ben chuckled. He led them back up a level. Now, for the utility deck. He opened a set of double doors to the left, revealing a room that caused Chopper to immediately burst into tears of pure joy. It was a medical bay that rivaled the top research hospitals of the modern world. The walls were lined with pristine, stainless steel surgical tables. There were automated sterilization fields, an actual MRI and X-ray machine powered by the arc reactor, massive temperature-controlled pharmaceutical refrigerators, and a vast wall of glass cabinets fully stocked with every rare herb, antivenom, and medical supply Ben could conjure. It has everything, Chopper sobbed, running inside and hugging a high-tech centrifuge. It's so clean. It's so perfect. I can cure anything in here. You're the doctor, Chopper, Ben smiled softly. You deserve a facility that matches your genius. I'm not happy you're praising me, you bastard. Chopper yelled, doing his signature happy noodle dance across the sterile floor in his fresh new suit. Across the hall, Ben pointed to the opposite set of doors, is the mega workshop. Usopp kicked the doors open. His jaw unhinged, comically hitting the floor. The workshop was a tinkerer's paradise. It was massive, expanded by space magic to resemble an industrial hangar. It housed heavy-duty welding stations, a massive forge, precision laser cutters, rows of high-end tools, and crates overflowing with raw materials including scraps of URU metal, tungsten, and spare arc reactor parts. Usopp, Ben said, leaning against the doorframe. You are our primary sniper and secondary engineer. With this room, you can upgrade or build your own specialty ammunition, and invent anything your mind can conceptualize. Usopp fell to his knees, weeping openly. I am unworthy. It's too glorious. I'm going to build a robot. No, a laser-shooting robot that fires smaller, exploding robots. Pace yourself, Ben laughed, ushering them back to the main staircase. Let's move to the residential and training wings. They ascended to the mid-deck. Ben pushed open a set of ornate, dark mahogany double doors. Robin gasped. It was a rare, genuine expression of pure shock from the normally composed archaeologist. The Grand Library. It was a multi-tiered room that looked like it had been ripped straight out of a Victorian mansion. Spiral staircases connected 3 levels of massive, towering bookshelves. The scent of old paper, leather bindings, and polished wood filled the air. Soft, warm reading lamps hovered magically over plush leather armchairs and velvet sofas. I don't understand, Robin whispered, walking forward as if in a trance. She reached out, her trembling fingers brushing the spine of a massive tome. I used my magic to recreate the entirety of the Alabaster Royal Library and the Drum Kingdom's medical archives, Ben explained softly. But that's not all. I also used my creation quirk to transcribe the technical manuals of advanced sciences and the historical texts from O'Hara that you managed to preserve in your memory. Every book here is real. Every piece of knowledge is yours. Robin didn't say a word. She just sank into one of the plush armchairs, pulled a book titled Advanced Quantum Mechanics and the Application of Magical Runes off the shelf, and buried her face in it, a serene, unimaginably happy smile spreading across her face. We might not see her for a month, Vivi giggled, patting Robin's shoulder. As the crew filed out of the library, Zoro, thoroughly distracted by a particularly interesting potted plant in the hallway, turned his head for exactly 1 second. He confidently took a step to the right and walked through an entirely different door. Next, for our navigator, Ben gestured across the hall, completely missing Zoro's departure, and slid open a sleek glass door. Nami stepped inside and gasped. It wasn't a standard charting room filled with rolled parchment and simple compasses. In the center of the dark room sat a massive, circular table projecting a glowing, three-dimensional holographic topographical map of the Grand Line. The holographic cartography room, Ben explained, watching the blue light reflect in Nami's eyes. It ties directly into the ship's radar and atmospheric barometers. It displays real-time weather patterns, ocean currents, and enemy ship blips. You can zoom in and out just by swiping your hands in the air. Nami tentatively swiped her hand above the table. The glowing 3D map zoomed in flawlessly, projecting a perfect miniature of Water 7 and the surrounding ocean. Berry signs literally flashed in her eyes. I can map the entire world with this. Ben, I could kiss you. Hold that thought, Ben laughed. Let's check the Vanguard's domain. He led them further down the hall and showed them two heavily reinforced tungsten doors side by side. On the left, the gravity chamber, Ben noted. I've upgraded the runes. You can now increase the localized gravity up to 100 G. On the right, the hyperbolic time chamber. Identical to the one we trained in, but permanently installed. If you feel like your haki is rusting, step inside. Sanji is adjusting his vibrant new suit jacket. I need to test my kicks under 50 G before the mosshead stinks up the room with his sweat. Speaking of which, where is the idiot? Leaving them to wonder, Ben led the rest of the crew to the upper deck, the main residential area. Prepare yourselves, Ben warned, opening the doors to the living quarters. Because we are officially a Yonko caliber crew, we should live like one. The interior of the living quarters was nothing short of a 5-star luxury hotel. The hallways were lined with plush, crimson carpets and intricate woodwork. Ben showed them the bedrooms. Each crew member had their own private suite, complete with king-sized beds featuring memory foam mattresses, automated climate control, soundproof walls, and massive porthole windows that offered panoramic views of the ocean. They passed a set of sliding wooden doors that radiated heat. The spa and sauna, Ben pointed out. I created a localized hot spring. It features a massive cedarwood tub, a dry sauna with Himalayan salt walls, and a steam room, perfect for muscle recovery after intense combat. Nami and Vivi linked arms, practically squealing in delight. A private spa, on a pirate ship. We are never leaving, Nami declared. Finally, Ben brought them to the crown jewel of the interior, the kitchen and dining hall. Sanji stepped into the room and immediately dropped to his knees. The kitchen was an industrial, culinary paradise, expanded by runes to easily accommodate the giants. There was a massive, 10-burner gas range, a dual convection oven, a wood-fired pizza oven, and a massive, gleaming stainless steel prep island. Before you cry over the pantry, look around you, Ben said, gesturing to the walls of the dining hall. The walls weren't made of wood. They were constructed of floor-to-ceiling, ultra-reinforced glass, holding back a massive, magically expanded saltwater tank. Schools of vibrant fish, tiny sharks, and glowing jellyfish swam through a pristine coral reef built directly into the ship's architecture. The infinite aquarium, Ben announced. The water constantly cycles fresh from the ocean outside. Sanji, you can catch fresh deep-sea fish directly from the lounge hatch. As they admired the serene underwater view, a face suddenly pressed against the glass from the inside of the tank. It was Zoro. He was completely submerged, holding his breath, his vibrant new green shirt floating around him like seaweed. He knocked angrily on the thick glass, glaring at the crew and gesturing wildly as if to say, how did I end up outside? How did he get in the fish tank? Usopp screamed, grabbing his head. Sanji burst into tears of laughter, pounding his fist on the table. Leave him. Let him become part of the ecosystem. Ben sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. I'll go fish him out of the maintenance hatch in a minute. Anyway, attached to the kitchen. Ben pointed to a sunlit, glass-enclosed room adjacent to the dining area. Is the hydroponic greenhouse. It simulates multiple climates simultaneously. Chopper, you can grow rare medicinal herbs in there, and Sanji, you have an endless supply of fresh produce, regardless of the weather outside. Chopper and Sanji hugged each other, weeping tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Ben then opened a heavy, vault-like door inside the kitchen itself. Inside was a massive, walk-in refrigerator and freezer, crackling with a magical stasis frost. The stasis lock pantry, Ben explained. Time doesn't move inside this room. You can store a fresh sea king in here, and a year later, the meat will still be perfectly bloody. The vegetables will never wilt. The bread will never go stale. Furthermore, the pantry has a biometric lock. Only you, me, and Vivi have the passcode. Luffy cannot break into it at 3 a.m. Sanji stood up, his visible eye burning with absolute devotion. He grabbed Ben's hands, shaking them violently. You are a god among men, magician. I will cook you the greatest meals the world has ever seen. I will build a shrine to you in the corner. I can't eat the midnight meat. Luffy gasped in the background, clutching his chest as if he had been shot. Betrayal. Mutiny. Grow up, Luffy, Ace laughed, slapping the back of Luffy's head. Just ask the cook nicely. As the group turned to head back out to the main deck, Luffy deliberately lagged behind. He stared hungrily at the heavy vault door. Checking to make sure Ben wasn't looking, Luffy sneakily pressed his hand flat against the glowing biometric scanner. BZZZT. Access denied, Sunny's cheerful, boyish voice echoed from a hidden speaker. Identity, meet thief. Before Luffy could even blink, a concealed compartment above the door sprang open. A giant, spring-loaded mechanical boxing glove shot out at lightning speed, punching Luffy squarely in the face. BWAH. Luffy launched backward across the kitchen, flying perfectly into Sanji's waiting arms. Sanji smirked, immediately dropping his captain onto the hard tile floor. Beautiful engineering, Ben. Now, for the exterior, Ben said, leading them back out to the main deck. The main deck was covered in a perfectly manicured lawn of vibrant green grass. It felt soft and cool beneath their boots. A lawn on a ship is great, Ace noted, crossing his arms. But it feels a little empty in the center. Watch, Ben smirked. He walked over to a small control pedestal near the main mast and flipped a switch. Clunk. Whirr. The center of the grass deck suddenly split down the middle. Massive, heavy atomwood panels began to slide outward, retracting under the side decks. As the panels pulled back, they revealed a massive, deep basin lined with pristine blue tiles. Then, the spatial expansion runes carved into the tiles activated. The basin warped, stretching and expanding downward and outward into an isolated pocket of space. Fresh, crystal-clear water began to pump rapidly from the ship's filtration system, filling the void. In a matter of seconds, the center of the Thousand Sunny featured a massive swimming pool. But because of the expansion runes, it wasn't just a pool, it looked and felt like a small, tranquil freshwater lake, complete with a shallow end for wading and a deep end for diving. A lake! Usopp screamed, grabbing his head. We have a lake on the ship. Freshwater, Ben confirmed. Perfect for bathing, swimming, or just relaxing. The water is constantly filtered and temperature controlled by the arc reactor. Cannonball! Luffy roared. He stripped off his vibrant new red jacket, leaving his shirt on, and dove headfirst into the deep end. Chopper immediately followed suit with a joyous squeal. Splush! Splush! They hit the water. And instead of swimming, they instantly sank like stones to the very bottom of the pool, twitching helplessly as their devil fruit curses kicked in. They're drowning! Usopp shrieked. Zoro, now dripping wet from his aquarium Dieter having just emerged from a hatch, let out a massive sigh. He jumped into the pool, grabbed both the paralyzed captain and the doctor by their collars, and easily hoisted them out, dropping them onto the grassy deck where they coughed up water. Ben facepalmed. Freshwater just means you don't taste like salt when you drown. Standing water still paralyzes devil fruit users, you idiots. Stick to the shallow end. Luffy shivered, his clothes plastered to his skin. Sea cold. Honestly, Ben muttered. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Sikatum. A wave of warm, magical air washed over Luffy, Chopper, and Zoro. In an instant, the water evaporated harmlessly. Their vibrant new outfits, hair, and bodies were perfectly, comfortably dry and warm as if they had just stepped out of a dryer. Whoa! Magic towel! Luffy cheered, instantly bouncing back to his feet. Ben left them to their fun and gestured for the others to look up. Towering high above the deck, built into the main mast, was a large, dome-like structure enclosed in thick, reinforced glass. The observation tower and crow's nest, Ben pointed up. It's not just a lookout post. It's a state-of-the-art command center. It features long-range radar, atmospheric barometers for Nami to track weather anomalies, an enemy detection grid that scans for hostile signatures, and a localized sonar system designed specifically to track and deter aggressive sea kings. So nobody can sneak up on us, Zoro noted, nodding approvingly. Good. Ben clapped his hands again, drawing the attention of the crew. Now that you've seen the hardware, Ben smiled, it's time for you to meet the software. The newest, official member of our crew. Ben tapped a small communicator on his wrist. Sunny, you're up. From the hidden, high-fidelity speakers built seamlessly into the woodwork around the deck, a voice crackled to life. It wasn't the robotic, customer service voice from the dry dock. Ben had spent the last few days tweaking the vocal parameters, ensuring the AI fit the chaotic, familial vibe of the crew. Hi everyone. The voice was bright, energetic, and undeniably cheerful. It sounded exactly like an eager, enthusiastic 10-year-old boy. I am the Thousand Sunny. Systems are at 100%. Hull integrity is flawless. Meat reserves are nominal, but could be higher. It is an absolute honor to be your ship, Captain Luffy. Because they had literally spent the last year being yelled at by Minnie Mary, a ship spirit in the body of a mechanical little girl, none of the Straw Hats even batted an eye at the fact that their new ship was talking to them like a little brother. Shishishi. Hi Sunny. Luffy waved, completely unfazed. I'm Luffy, the man who's gonna be king of the pirates. Nice to meet you, Sunny-kun, Nami smiled, waving at the main mast. Yo, Sunny, Zoro grunted, lifting a hand in greeting. Hello, Swordsman Zoro. Hello, Navigator Nami. Sunny's voice bounced around the deck happily. I have optimized the climate control in the bedrooms, and I have taken the liberty of securely engaging the kitchen locks until dinner time to prevent unauthorized snacking. Boxing glove defenses are primed. Good boy, Sunny. Sanji cheered, lighting a cigarette. You're already my favorite. No. Luffy wailed, sinking to his knees in despair. Mary, Sunny's voice addressed the small girl, who was sitting on the railing with her arms crossed. I have downloaded the combat protocols. Awaiting your tactical directives, sister. Minnie Mary pushed her aviator sunglasses down her nose, a proud smirk on her face. Not bad, brother. Keep that energy up, and we'll rule these seas. Just remember, I'm the boss when Papa isn't looking. Understood, boss. Sunny chirped. The crew was basking in the absolute perfection of their new home when a sudden, chaotic noise from the docks below broke the peace. Get back here with my Speedo, you bastards. Luffy climbed up and walked over to the starboard railing, peering down at the dry dock alongside Ace, Zoro, Sanji, and Ben. What they saw was a scene of utter, unhinged madness. Sprinting down the cobblestone docks of Water 7 was the entire Frankie family, Zanbei, Mozu, Kiwi, and a dozen other massive, heavily armed thugs. They were all crying waterfalls of tears, their faces contorted in a mix of profound sorrow and desperate determination. In Zanbei's hands, waving like a bizarre flag of surrender, was a tiny, neon blue Speedo. And sprinting furiously behind them, shaking his massive, cybernetic fists in the air, was Frankie himself. He was wearing his signature open Hawaiian shirt. His sunglasses were askew. His massive metal forearms were gleaming in the sun. But below the waist? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He was completely, entirely bottomless, his cybernetic enhancements proudly, horrifyingly on display for the entire city to see. "Give me back my pants." Frankie roared, his voice cracking with rage. "This is a violation of my human rights. I am a respectable cyborg. A super cyborg. We're doing this for your own good, Aniki." Zambei wailed, tears streaming down his face as he sprinted for his life. "You can't stay here. You have to be a pirate." The women of the Straw Hat crew, Nami, Vivi, and Robin, walked over to the railing. "Oh, good heavens," Nami shrieked, instantly covering her eyes with both hands. "My eyes, my eyes, my eyes, my eyes, my innocent eyes." "How avant-garde," Robin noted, not looking away, a bemused smile on her face. Vivi blushed furiously, pulling Kara's goggles down over the duck's eyes. "Ariel does not approve of this public indecency." "Hey, Straw Hat!" Zambei screamed, looking up at the majestic Thousand Sunny. With a mighty heave, Zambei threw the neon blue Speedo high into the air. Luffy casually reached his rubber arm out and snatched the flying underwear out of the air. Luffy stood on the railing, holding the tiny blue Speedo in his hand, looking down at the panting, bottomless cyborg. Frankie skidded to a halt at the base of the ship, using his massive hands to desperately try and cover his lower half, his face burning bright red. "Straw Hat!" Frankie yelled, pointing a trembling finger up at Luffy. "Give those back. That is my favorite pair. They are aerodynamic." Luffy grinned his wide, signature smile. He held the Speedo hostage. "Frankie!" Luffy shouted down. "You built this awesome ship for us. You helped us at Enice Lobby. You're super weird, and you run around naked." "I am only naked because my family stole my pants. Join my crew," Luffy declared, his voice ringing with absolute, kingly authority. "Be our shipwright. Sail on the ship of your dreams." The crowd on the dock fell silent. Iceberg watched from the sidelines, a small, knowing smile on his face. He knew Frankie's dream was to build a ship that could sail to the end of the world, and there it was, floating right in front of him. But Frankie gritted his teeth. He looked away, his expression turning stubborn. "No," Frankie grunted. "I can't. I have my family here. I have to protect Water 7. I owe Tom-san that much. Now give me my damn Speedo and get out of my city." The Frankie family burst into fresh, hysterical tears. "Aniki, you idiot!" Zambei cried, falling to his knees. "You can't stay. You have a 44 million berry bounty on your head now. The Marines are coming for you. If you stay here, you'll be arrested or killed." "Zambei is right, Frankie." Iceberg stepped forward, his coat billowing in the wind. "You've built your dream ship. Now, you have to be the one to maintain it. Water 7 will be fine. I am the mayor. I will protect this city. Your destiny is on the sea." "I said no." Frankie yelled, trying to hide his own forming tears behind his sunglasses. "I ain't leaving." On the deck of the Sunny, Robin sighed. She closed her book about ancient poisons and walked over to the railing, standing beside Luffy. "He is being incredibly stubborn, Captain," Robin observed calmly. "Yeah," Luffy frowned, tilting his head. "How do we make him get on the ship?" Robin crossed her arms in front of her chest, her signature pose. A dark, terrifying aura seemed to radiate from her, a mix of her usual morbid humor and the sheer, unquestionable confidence of a woman who had spent a year dodging literal death. "Allow me to offer a persuasive argument," Robin said softly. Robin focused her gaze on the bottomless cyborg below. Dos fleur. Pink petals materialized out of thin air directly on Frankie's inner thighs. Two delicate, pale hands sprouted from his flesh, positioned perfectly, dangerously close to the cyborg's most vulnerable, undeniably human anatomical features. Frankie froze. The blood drained from his face. He looked down. "Hey!" Frankie whispered, his voice trembling in sudden, primal terror. What are those hands doing there?" "Hey, Nico Robin. We're friends, right? We fought Spandam together. Let's talk about this." Robin offered a sweet, chilling smile. "Grab." Robin closed her fists. "Oranges." Frankie's scream was not human. It was a high-pitched, soul-tearing shriek that transcended language, echoing across the entirety of Water 7 and terrifying seagulls miles away. The reaction on the dock and the ship was instantaneous, universal, and profoundly solemn. Instead of merely wincing, every single male present, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, Ace, Ben, Iceberg, the Frankie family thugs, and even the giant Oimo and Kashiai slowly and synchronously took off their sunglasses, goggles, or hats. They stood in a perfectly straight line, placing their right hands firmly over their hearts, bowing their heads in a dead silent moment of mourning for their fallen comrade. A single, distant seagull cried out, sounding suspiciously like a tolling bell. Nami looked around at the impromptu funeral service happening on the deck. "Why are you all acting like somebody died?" Sanji kept his head bowed, a single, manly tear sliding down his cheek. He answered through gritted teeth. "A man's soul just left his body, Nami-san. Show some respect." Down on the dock, Frankie was on his tiptoes, his eyes rolled back in his head, his cybernetic mouth opening and closing soundlessly as Robin maintained the agonizing grip. "Robin!" Luffy yelled, his own legs squeezed tightly together, his rubber body trembling. "Stop! We want him as a whole shipwright. Don't rip him off. I mean, don't rip it off. Just let him go." Robin uncrossed her arms, and the hands on Frankie's thighs dissolved into pink petals. "I only squeezed once," Robin noted innocently, brushing off her dress. "He is being quite dramatic. That was not a single squeeze. That was an extinction-level event." Usopp shrieked from the floor. Frankie collapsed onto the cobblestones, clutching his battered pride, sobbing uncontrollably. The physical pain was immense, but the emotional dam had finally broken. He looked up at Iceberg, who was nodding softly. He looked at the Frankie family, who were giving him tearful thumbs-ups. And he looked up at the Thousand Sunny, the ship he had poured his soul into. "You guys." Frankie sniffled, wiping his nose with his massive forearm. "You really want a weirdo like me to ride on that super ship? We don't want anyone else." Luffy yelled down, grinning. Frankie stood up slowly, his legs wobbling. He threw his arms wide open, striking his signature pose, tears freely flowing down his face. "Then it can't be helped," Frankie roared, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'll be your shipwright. I'll take this ship to the end of the world. Suyuyuper." The harbor erupted in deafening cheers. The Frankie family wailed in joy, hugging each other. Iceberg smiled, pulling his coat tight against the wind. Luffy tossed the neon blue Speedo down. Frankie caught it, quickly slipping it on, finally restoring his dignity. With a powerful leap, Frankie launched himself from the dock, soaring through the air and landing heavily on the grassy deck of the Thousand Sunny. "Welcome aboard, Frankie," Ben said, extending a hand. "Super to be here, magician," Frankie grinned, shaking it. He looked around the deck, taking in the vibranium weave, the massive pool, the towering mast. "I'm gonna make this baby fly." "I count on it," Ben smiled. Ben walked over to the ship's control console. He placed his hand on the throttle. "Sunny," Ben commanded. "Disengage moorings. Spin up the arc reactor. Maximum thrust." Aye, Papa." Spinning up the arc reactor. Moorings detached. Maximum thrust engaging now. "Hold on tight, everyone." Sunny's eager voice rang out. A deep, powerful hum vibrated through the hull. The water around the Sunny began to churn as the massive paddle wheels, powered by infinite energy, spun them away from the harbor. The Straw Hat crew rushed to the railings, looking down at the people of Water 7. "Thank you for everything, Icebergassen." Luffy screamed, waving his straw hat wildly. "Stay out of trouble, you idiots." Iceberg shouted back, waving his hand. "Anarchy, we love you." The Frankie family bawled, waving massive flags. "Take care of yourselves, my family." Frankie cried, striking his pose one last time on the railing. As the Thousand Sunny pulled away from the dock, moving with a speed and grace that defied its massive size, the crew stood together, looking out at the endless horizon. The hell of the time chamber was behind them. The ship of their dreams was beneath their feet. "Next stop," Ben said, pulling out a log pose that was pointing steadily downward. "Thriller bark." The Thousand Sunny caught the wind, sailing toward the deep blue. 133, on the seas, 1. The Thousand Sunny cut through the azure waters of the Water 7 archipelago with a grace that completely belied its colossal size. The arc reactor purred deep within its atomwood bones, providing a steady, infinite hum of power that made the ocean feel like a calm lake. On the grassy main deck, the Straw Hat crew was still buzzing from the adrenaline of their departure and Frankie's dramatic, tear-soaked recruitment. But the peaceful departure was violently interrupted. Boom! A massive geyser of water erupted a mere 50 yards off the Sunny's starboard bow, showering the lower decks in a fine, salty mist. "Hostile vessel detected." Sunny's bright, boyish voice rang out from the ship's speakers, completely devoid of panic. "Papa, we have a massive marine battleship approaching from the rear. It's moving surprisingly fast." Ben adjusted his glasses, leaning against the railing and looking back toward the city. Breaking through the morning fog was a colossal marine warship, its sails catching the wind, its bow styled like the head of a massive bulldog holding a bone in its mouth. Standing at the very tip of the bulldog figurehead, wearing his dog mask and holding a massive megaphone, was Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp. "Straw Hat Luffy. Porgas D. Hayes." Garp's voice roared through the megaphone, amplified to deafening levels. "Stop your ship and surrender immediately. You are surrounded by the unyielding justice of the Marines." Luffy, standing on the stern, burst out laughing. "Grandpa's a terrible actor. He's grinning. He's trying to make it look like we fought our way out," Ace smirked, crossing his arms. "If he just let us sail away, Sengoku would have him executed for treason. Surrender now or face my wrath." Garp bellowed, and with a swift, terrifying motion, he reached into a crate beside him and began hurling standard iron cannonballs with his bare hands. The cannonballs tore through the air at supersonic speeds, whistling like falling meteors directly toward the Thousand Sunny. "Incoming projectiles," Sunny reported. "Should I deploy the aft shields, Papa?" "No need, Sunny," Ben smiled, glancing at the sniper tower. "Let the Vanguard handle it." Up on the grassy deck, Usopp didn't even flinch. He casually raised the pistol. He didn't look through a scope. He didn't even look at the incoming cannonballs. His eyes glowed with the faint, crimson hue of advanced observation haki. He saw the trajectory of the cannonballs 2 seconds before they arrived. Pew, 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 pew. 4 precise, instantaneous beams of condensed plasma shot from Usopp's pistol. Mid-air, halfway between the marine ship and the Sunny, the 4 iron cannonballs exploded into harmless clouds of vapor and shrapnel. On the marine ship, the standard infantrymen dropped their jaws in sheer horror. He shot Vice Admiral Garp's meteor pitches out of the sky. With a handgun. Who is that sniper? "God, Usopp," a Marine lieutenant whispered, looking at the newly updated bounty posters. "Bounty, 450 million berries. They say he never misses." Garp watched the explosions, his chest swelling with undeniable pride, though he quickly masked it with a furious scowl. "Don't you dare get cocky, you brats." Garp roared, tossing the megaphone aside. He reached behind him, grasping a massive, iron chain. With a heave that made the entire marine battleship tilt dramatically to one side, Garp hoisted a gargantuan, city-block-sized iron cannonball into the air. "Behold, the giant iron ball!" Garp yelled. "I'll sink your new toy to the bottom of the sea." "He's actually going to throw it!" Chopper shrieked, his eyes popping out of his head. "He's insane." Luffy and Ace stood side by side at the railing, entirely unfazed by the mountain of iron hovering over them. "See ya, Grandpa!" Luffy screamed, waving both arms wildly. "Thanks for everything. Don't die of old age before I become a great pirate." Ace added with a fiery grin. "I told you not to mess with the Marines." Garp roared back, winding up his massive arm. He hurled the colossal iron ball with the force of a natural disaster. The sheer wind pressure from the throw parted the clouds above them. Ben calmly walked over to the helm. "Sonny." "Yes, Papa." Sonny replied eagerly. "Blast off. Show them what your thrusters can do." Aye, Papa." "Hold on tight, everyone." Arc reactor redirecting to ventral thrusters. Initiating coup de burst protocol, aerial variant. Beneath the Thousand Sunny, the water began to boil and glow with blinding azure light. The massive paddle wheels shifted, and concealed thruster ports opened along the atomwood hull. Whoosh! A pillar of pure, clean arc reactor energy blasted downward into the ocean. The Thousand Sunny didn't just sail away, it shot directly up into the sky, launching itself at a 45-degree angle over the ocean. The colossal iron ball passed harmlessly beneath them, splashing into the sea and creating a localized tsunami that rocked the marine battleship. High above, the Thousand Sunny soared like a majestic, mechanical bird, the sunlion figurehead gleaming brilliantly against the sky. It flew for 3 full miles before gracefully landing on the ocean surface with a smooth, perfectly calibrated splash, immediately catching the wind in its massive sails and speeding off toward the horizon. On the deck of the marine warship, the soldiers were completely paralyzed. Their weapons hung loosely in their hands. The ship just flew. A commander stuttered. "What kind of monsters are the Straw Hats?" Garp stood at the bow of his ship, watching the Thousand Sunny disappear into the distance. The fierce, terrifying scowl melted off his face, replaced by a wide, booming, utterly unrestrained laugh. Bwahahaha. Garp clutched his stomach, tears in his eyes. "Fly on, you magnificent idiots. Turn the world upside down." A few days later, the calm belt border. The Thousand Sunny sailed peacefully, enjoying the quiet interlude before they officially charted their course for Fishman Island. The sky was clear, the breeze was warm, and the ship's automated systems kept them on a perfect trajectory. Down in the residential deck, adjacent to the luxurious spa, the crew had taken over the Sunny's dedicated salon room. Ben had designed the room to resemble a high-end vanity suite, complete with plush leather barber chairs, floor-to-ceiling mirrors, and automated hair-washing sinks. Today, it was packed. For 14 months in the time chamber, hygiene had been maintained entirely by Ben's Scour Jiffy charms, but actual grooming had been non-existent. The crew looked wild. Zoro's hair was overgrown and shaggy, Usopp's curls were a tangled mess, and Ace's hair was practically an untamed lion's mane, though he was currently refusing to let anyone with scissors near it. Sanji, Nami, and Robin had taken it upon themselves to restore the crew to their civilized and aesthetic selves. Sanji was currently standing behind Vivi, using a pair of tiny, gold-plated detailing scissors to trim the ends of her light blue hair. "Ah, Vivi-chuan." He swooned, his visible eye forming a massive heart. "Your hair is like spun sapphire. It is an absolute honor to groom such royalty." "Just don't cut too much off, Sanji-kun," Vivi smiled, checking her reflection in a hand mirror. "Never, my goddess." Sanji instantly spun around. His demeanor violently shifted from a love-struck puppy to a hardened, terrifying butcher as he marched over to Zoro. He pulled a massive, blindingly sharp meat cleaver from his apron. "All right, Marimo. Hold still. I'm shaving it all off." "If you bring that cleaver within an inch of my scalp, cook," Zoro grunted, keeping his arms crossed beneath the barber cape but resting one hand dangerously close to Watawakimanji, "I'll dice your favorite frying pan into confetti." In the corner, Usopp was standing on a stool, carefully trimming the massive, overgrown beards of Dory, Brogy, Oimo, and Kashiai. "Steady, God Usopp," Brogy laughed, his voice shaking the room. "An Elbath warrior's beard is his pride." "Don't worry," Usopp boasted, snipping carefully. "I have the steady hands of a master marksman." Nearby, Luffy was supposed to be getting his hair cut by Nami. Key word, supposed. Luffy was vibrating on the spinning barber chair like a rubber band pulled far too tight. His legs bounced continuously. His head swiveled left to look out the porthole window, then right to watch Sanji threaten Zoro, then up to stare at the fancy light fixtures. "Luffy, I can't cut a straight line if you're having a seizure," Nami complained, holding a pair of shears and trying to track his erratic movements. "Hold still for 2 seconds. I'm bored." Luffy whined, stretching his rubber neck to look over Nami's shoulder. "Is it done yet? Can we eat meat now?" Whack! Nami's fist, coated in pitch-black armament haki, collided squarely with the top of Luffy's skull. "OWWW." Luffy yelped, clutching a smoking bump on his head. "Sit perfectly still," Nami threatened, a demonic aura flaring behind her, "or I am going to shave you completely bald, do you understand?" Luffy instantly went rigid, sitting as still as a stone statue while Nami efficiently finished trimming his wild black hair. Robin stood behind one of the plush leather barber chairs in the center of the room. Ben sat in the chair, a white cape draped over his shoulders. His silver-white hair had grown quite long during the training, falling past his shoulders in messy, thick waves. He looked less like a sophisticated mastermind and more like a rugged, exhausted castaway. Your hair has grown remarkably fast, magician, Robin noted, running a delicate comb through the thick strands. Her touch was gentle, her fingers occasionally brushing his scalp in a way that was undeniably soothing. Time chamber mechanics, Ben sighed, leaning back and closing his eyes behind his glasses. The body ages normally, even if the magic repairs the cellular damage. I feel like I haven't seen a barber in a decade. Well, you are in capable hands, Robin smiled softly, the sound of her scissors making a rhythmic, metallic snip-snip. What kind of style are you looking for? Do you want to keep the length, or return to your previous, shorter look? Ben opened one eye, looking at Robin's reflection in the large vanity mirror in front of him. You have a good eye for aesthetics, Robin. Surprise me. Give me something that fits our new status. A surprise, Robin mused, her eyes gleaming with a hint of playful mischief. Very well. Trust me. For the next 20 minutes, Robin worked with meticulous precision. She didn't just cut, she sculpted. Using her devil fruit, she sprouted an extra pair of hands to hold the mirror and perfectly angled the scissors, ensuring absolute symmetry. Finished, Robin announced, brushing the loose hair from his shoulders. Take a look. Ben opened his eyes and looked into the mirror. His eyebrows rose in genuine appreciation. The transformation was striking. Robin had opted for a dangerously stylish, aristocratic pirate mane. The wild, overgrown length was expertly layered and thinned out, swept back off his face to give him a rugged, windblown look. A few sharp, textured strands of his silver-white hair fell effortlessly over his forehead, framing his sharp features, while the back was gathered and tied off into a short, neat queue at the nape of his neck. It perfectly highlighted the golden glow of his eyes. It wasn't the neat, corporate look of a mastermind anymore, it was the look of a legendary pirate lord, wild, incredibly charismatic, but impeccably groomed. Robin, Ben said, running a hand through the swept-back top, feeling the perfect texture. This is masterful. I look like I should be commanding a pirate armada or stealing a kingdom's treasury. You already run the most dangerous syndicate on the sea, Robin smiled, her eyes crinkling in amusement. It is only fitting you look the part of a kingmaker. My turn, Ben said, standing up and removing the cape. He gestured to the plush leather chair. Take a seat, Ms. Archaeologist. Let me return the favor. Robin raised an eyebrow but gracefully sat down. Are you a skilled stylist, Magician-san? I have my skills, Ben winked, wrapping a fresh cape around her shoulders. What kind of hairstyle are you looking for? Robin looked at him through the mirror, a faint smile on her lips. Surprise me. A mischievous, highly suspicious grin spread across Ben's face. Get ready to be surprised. 10 minutes later, Robin stared into the mirror. Ben had styled her hair into a towering, absurdly large pompadour that defied gravity, making her look like a delinquent street gang leader. Robin glared at him through the glass. Her eyes were utterly devoid of amusement. What, didn't like it? Ben laughed, waving his hands defensively. Fair enough, I will try another. 10 more minutes passed. Robin looked in the mirror again. This time, her hair was arranged into two massive, rigid pigtails that stuck straight out to the sides like airplane wings. Robin slowly crossed her arms over her chest. A chilling, homicidal aura filled the salon room. Dos fleur, she whispered. Two pale hands sprouted on Ben's shoulders, their fingers hovering dangerously close to his cervical vertebrae. If you do not take this seriously, Magician-san, I will inflict lifetime damage upon your spine. Ben immediately lifted his hands in surrender. All right, no joking, I promise. Give me 10 more minutes. The extra hands dissolved into petals. Ben got to work, his movements precise and serious this time. He trimmed, layered, and wove the strands with dexterity. Finished, Ben announced. Robin opened her eyes. The ridiculous styles were gone. Her hair had been expertly layered and smoothed out, falling elegantly down her back and pulled slightly away from her forehead to frame her striking features perfectly. But Ben had added a unique, personal touch, a few small, intricate strands of woven hair on the side, adorned with delicate, beautiful beads that clinked softly when she moved. Oh, Robin whispered, touching the beaded braids, genuinely moved by the elegance. It's beautiful. Sunny's voice chimed from the room's intercom speaker. Papa looks super cool, and Auntie Robin looks like a queen. Thanks, Sunny, Ben chuckled, brushing the loose hair off his suit. I'm going to head to my quarters to freshen up and change. I have a major announcement to make at breakfast. Ooh, an announcement. Mary's holographic projection appeared on the vanity mirror, sitting with her legs dangling over the glass. Is it about the shiny fruit in your dimensional vault, Papa? You'll see, Mary, Ben winked, turning toward the door. Gather everyone in the dining hall in 30 minutes. 30 minutes later, the dining hall of the Thousand Sunny was filled with the mouth-watering scent of Sanji's cooking. The crew sat around the massive Adamwood dining table, enjoying fluffy pancakes, sizzling bacon, and fresh fruit from the ship's hydroponic garden. The massive saltwater aquarium bathed the room in a serene, blue light. Zorro, now sporting a clean, sharp buzzcut on the sides with his signature messy top, was eating silently. Luffy and Ace were inhaling food at a rate that defied physics, while Frankie was guzzling a bottle of freshly brewed Arcola. Dory, Brogy, Oimo, and Kashiai were happily sharing a massive barrel of ale at the end of the table. The doors slid open, and Ben entered. He was dressed in a sharp, dark navy suit with a silver undershirt, his new haircut perfectly complementing the powerful, commanding aura he exuded. Morning, everyone, Ben said, taking his seat at the head of the table next to Luffy. Papa's looking sharp. Sunny announced over the intercom. All right, listen up. Ben tapped his fork against his glass, drawing the immediate attention of the room. He reached into his pocket and placed a small, glowing vial of translucent blue liquid on the table. Ben pointed at the vial. This vial contains a specialized genetic scrubber. It will completely remove the animal traits from your body, restoring your original, unaltered human DNA. Vivi stared at the blue vial. She reached out and picked it up. I'll miss the sky, Vivi said with a small, confident smile. But if it means taking the next step for this crew, I'm ready. She unstoppered the vial and drank the blue liquid in one smooth gulp. The table fell silent. They waited. After 5 minutes, Vivi rolled her shoulders, feeling lighter but strangely grounded. They're gone, Vivi breathed, as she tried to unfurl her wings. Quack! Caro cheered, nuzzling his beak against her cheek. Now for the fun part, Ben spoke up, his voice cutting through the quiet. Ben raised his right hand. With a flicker of spatial magic, a heavy, ornate wooden box materialized on the table in front of him. The room went dead silent. Even Luffy and Ace stopped chewing. Everyone stared at the box. They knew what Ben kept in his vault. They had been waiting for this moment since Alabasta. Ben unlatched the box and opened the lid. Resting on a bed of black velvet was a devil fruit. It was breathtakingly beautiful. It looked somewhat like a large, exotic pomegranate, but its skin was a mesmerizing gradient of deep, fiery crimson and molten gold. Intricate, swirling patterns, the hallmark of all devil fruits, covered its surface, looking less like spirals and more like tightly curled, elegant feathers. It seemed to emit a faint, warm glow of its own. This, Ben said softly, his eyes fixed on Vivi, is the fruit we've secured from the deepest, sealed catacombs beneath the Aluberna royal tombs in Alabasta. It was hidden away for centuries. Take it, Ben offered. Vivi slowly reached into the box. The moment her fingers brushed the skin of the fruit, it felt unusually warm, like a stone left out in the summer desert sun. She lifted it, feeling its heavy, dense weight. The taste, Ben warned, a small smirk playing on his lips, is notoriously horrific. You only need to swallow one bite for the power to transfer. You don't have to eat the whole thing. Vivi nodded. She looked around the table. Her nakama was watching her with absolute anticipation and support. She took a deep breath, brought the fruit to her lips, and took a large bite. Instantly, her face contorted into a mask of pure agony. Her eyes watered, her face turned a pale shade of green, and she gagged violently. Oh gods, Vivi choked out, slapping a hand over her mouth. It tastes like rotting garbage mixed with acid. Swallow it. Luffy cheered, laughing. That means it's working. With a heroic, monumental effort, Vivi forced herself to swallow the chunk of fruit. She immediately shoved the remainder of the fruit back into the box and grabbed a glass of orange juice, downing it in seconds to wash away the vile taste. The crew watched her intently. For a full minute, nothing happened. Vivi just sat there, panting, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Do you feel anything? Nami asked, leaning in close. Vivi closed her eyes, focusing inward. I feel warm. There's a heat in my chest. It feels ancient and very, very light. Try to call upon it, Ben instructed. Vivi took a deep breath. She focused on the center of her back, pushing the newly awakened energy outward. Whoosh! The sound wasn't the heavy flap of bird wings. It was the sound of a roaring fire igniting. The crew gasped collectively, chairs scraping against the floor as several of them stood up in shock. Bursting from Vivi's back were two massive, breathtaking wings. They were nothing like the brown, falcon-like wings of her serum form. These wings were a masterpiece of mythological beauty. The primary color was a brilliant, blinding molten gold that seemed to literally drip with light. Near the base of her back, the feathers transitioned into deep, fiery crimson and burning orange, giving the illusion that her wings were forged from a sunset. Woven throughout the gold and fire were striking, iridescent accents of bright turquoise and teal. Each individual feather looked as though it had been painted by a master artist, with edges that glowed with a soft, warm luminescence. When the sunlight from the aquarium caught the feathers, they shimmered like polished jewels. My God! Sanji whispered, the cigarette falling from his lips and burning a hole in the carpet. An angel, a literal angel. Vivi opened her eyes. Her pupils had elongated slightly, taking on a regal, predatory yet benevolent golden hue. She looked over her shoulder at her new wings, her breath catching in her throat at the sheer beauty of them. They're magnificent, Vivi whispered, flexing them gently. They moved with a liquid, effortless grace. Let's not test the full transformation in the dining room, Ben chuckled, standing up. Sanji will kill us if we break his aquarium. Let's go out to the lawn deck. I want to see what you can really do. The crew eagerly scrambled out of their chairs, practically sprinting out of the dining hall and onto the lush green grass of the main deck. The morning sun was shining brightly, the perfect stage for a myth. All right, Vivi, Ben stood near the mast, crossing his arms. Show us your Zoan form. Vivi nodded. She closed her eyes and let the power completely consume her. A pillar of swirling golden and crimson light erupted around her, forcing Luffy and Usopp to shield their eyes. The wind on the deck whipped into a frenzy, but it wasn't a violent wind. It was warm, soothing, and smelled faintly of blooming desert flowers and ozone. When the light faded, Princess Vivi was gone. In her place stood a creature of absolute, staggering majesty. She was massive, easily the size of a small house, her head brushing the lower riggings of the mast. She possessed the elegant, powerful body of a divine avian apex predator. Her breast and underbelly were layered in dense, shimmering feathers of deep oceanic blue and rich violet, adorned with an intricate, golden crest piece spanning her chest. Her head featured a sharp, golden beak and fierce, piercing eyes, crowned by a regal golden diadem woven with delicate pink flowers. Behind her crown, long, flowing blue plumage cascaded down her neck like a mane of sky-colored silk. Her wings were breathtaking, expansive sweeps of azure that transitioned into blazing, fiery orange and molten gold at the tips, decorated with striking, peacock-like eye spots. Her legs ended in thick, powerful golden talons. But her most mesmerizing feature was her tail, a cascading, endless train of blue, purple, and fiery golden feathers interwoven with ethereal flames and delicate golden chains that seemed to float on the wind without burning the ship's deck. Suji! Luffy roared, stars in his eyes as he looked up at the giant, glowing bird. She's so cool. Can I ride her? Beside him, Kara the duck was having a complete existential crisis. The spot-billed duck looked up at the majestic, house-sized golden avian that was his master. His beak dropped open. Without a single quack, Kara dropped flat onto his stomach, folding his wings in front of him, and began to rhythmically kowtow to the absolute pinnacle of the avian hierarchy. He had found his new bird god. What kind of bird is that? Usopp gasped, adjusting his own goggles to combat the blinding glare of the golden feathers. It's like a phoenix, but older. It's not just a bird. Robin stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe and archaeological recognition as she analyzed the glowing creature. Look at the crest, the fiery orange transitioning into teal, the sheer majesty of it. I've only read about this in the most ancient of mythological texts. A mythical zoan? Ace asked, leaning in, clearly impressed by the intense heat radiating from her. Yes, Robin nodded, her voice filled with deep reverence. It is a Cymurg. A Cymurg. Nami echoed. In legends predating the Void Century, Robin explained to the mesmerized crew, the Cymurg was known as the king of birds. It is not a creature of destruction, but an ultimate guardian. The myths say it has lived long enough to possess the combined knowledge of all ages. Its touch purifies the air, land, and water, and the dust from its feathers can heal any wound and cure any sickness. Ben stepped beside Robin, nodding in agreement. Exactly. The guardian of Alabasta. A protector. A fruit fitting for a princess who loves her country so much she'd die for it. The massive Cymurg let out a cry. It wasn't a screech. It was a resonant, harmonic sound that vibrated through the chests of everyone present, bringing an immediate, strange sense of absolute calm and clarity to their minds. The aura is incredible, Robin noted, placing a hand over her heart. Just being near her makes the fatigue in my muscles vanish. Now, the hybrid form, Ben instructed. The massive bird glowed again, shrinking and condensing. Vivi emerged in her hybrid form, and she looked nothing short of a divine Valkyrie of the skies. She retained her human face, her long blue hair flowing wildly in the wind, adorned with the same regal golden crown and pink flowers from her beast form. Her bright blue eyes sparkled with ancient power. She wore a form-fitting, intricate bodice made of shimmering blue scales and golden filigree that left her midriff exposed, accented by feathery orange and gold epaulets. Her lower legs were covered in iridescent blue and gold scales, transitioning smoothly into sharp, powerful golden talons from the knees down. Her massive, vibrant wings remained on her back, a magnificent blend of deep blues, fiery oranges, and peacock-eye patterns. Ethereal, flame-like tail feathers wrapped around her lower half, trailing delicate golden chains. She hovered a few feet off the deck, her wings beating silently. How does it feel, Vivi? Nami asked, looking up in awe. Vivi looked at her taloned, armored hands. I feel powerful. I feel like I weigh absolutely nothing. And my vision. I can see the individual scales on the fish swimming 3 miles below our ship. Vivi pointed a finger toward the sky. A small, concentrated orb of pure, radiant golden light formed at her fingertip. She didn't shoot it, she simply let it pulse. The sheer heat and light radiating from the tiny orb were blinding, carrying the purifying intensity of the sun. The Cymurg commands the light and the wind, Ben explained, watching her float. Your physical strength, speed, and durability are now on par with the strongest Zoans in the world. Your flames won't just burn, they will purify. Ben paused, pushing his glasses up his nose. But that is just the baseline. The true power of the Cymurg, its legendary ability to heal any wound, cure any curse, and access ancient wisdom is locked. You will only access those abilities when you awaken the fruit. Vivi landed softly on the grass, her wings folding elegantly behind her back. The golden glow faded slightly as she smiled, her heart swelling with newfound confidence. I'll master it, Vivi promised, looking at Ben, and then at Luffy. Hell yeah! Luffy cheered, throwing his fist into the air. We got a magic bird princess. Papa, Sunny's voice chirped happily from the speakers. I have officially updated Princess Vivi's threat level in my database from support unit to her superiority fighter. Good boy, Sunny, Ben chuckled. He looked out at the endless horizon, the thousand Sunny cutting through the waves with unprecedented speed. With a flying fortress, a crew of hacky monsters, and a newly minted mythical Zoan, the Straw Hat Syndicate wasn't just ready for the new world. They were ready to conquer it. Vivi, Zoan form, pick. Hybrid form, pick.
Hi guys. I made a paid service in Telegram where you will find a great collection of fanfiction audiobooks organized and regularly updated. What you get? An unlimited access to the full audiobook library. New fanfiction audiobooks added regularly. You can play audios directly from Telegram anytime. Joining our service is available through a monthly subscription of $5. You can pay using PayPal or Ko-fi. So what are you waiting for? Send me a message on Telegram or Discord. I will provide the payment details. After the payment is confirmed, you will receive access to the private Telegram channel containing all audiobooks. If you enjoy fanfiction and prefer listening instead of reading, this library is made for you. Message me anytime to join.